In recent years, there has been a narrowing of subject choice for children at the senior phase of their education. Those entering S4 now take on average fewer subjects than they did before the Curriculum for Excellence was introduced. I've heard members say that we are focusing too much on S4 and that subjects are available throughout the whole senior phase. To them, I would say that the idea of a child who has got a flavour of Spanish in, say, S1 to S3, and who was then forced to drop it because they only had 6 slots in S4, would somehow pick it up again later in the senior phase is totally unrealistic. The reduction in subject choice for Scottish children upsets me. But what really angers me is the frank denial from the SNP and Education Scotland on the seriousness of this issue. Responding to Ross Greer on the sad reality that some children have to travel from one school to another to take certain subjects, the Strategic Director claimed that the motivation from travelling to such a class more than makes up for missing any other activities like sport, drama or music. This very statement is a shameful denial of the problems. I know that I speak for parents, teachers and educationalists around Scotland when I say that we need to address this head-on. No more denials, no more deflections or downright ridiculous excuses. Let's address this problem before we fail a generation. Thank you.